Have you ever wondered what it would be like to face your past, not as the person you were, but as the person you've become? That question echoed in Emma's mind as she stared at the message on her phone, a notification from Ethan. Her ex, the man who, for 3 years, had been the center of her world. The man she'd sworn to never let back into her life. But there it was, a text from him, almost like a ghost from the past, reappearing to shake up the present. Her fingers hovered over the screen, unsure if she should open it. She'd been through so much since their breakup, months of healing, self-discovery, and finally finding her own rhythm. And now, here he was, reaching out like nothing had happened. Part of her wanted to delete it without reading, to pretend it had never come. But curiosity nodded her. "Hey Emma, I know it's been a while, but I'm having a get-together this weekend. It'd be great to see you again. It's been too long, hasn't it? Let me know if you're free. I'll have a +1 spot open for you." There it was. Ethan, ever the charmer, making it sound casual, like it was no big deal. But Emma knew better. She knew this wasn't just an innocent invitation. There was always a catch with him. He was probably trying to prove something about himself, about their past, or maybe just to see if he could still get under her skin. But Emma wasn't the same person she had been when they first dated. She wasn't the girl who had put up with his controlling ways, the one who had sacrificed her own dreams just to keep the peace in their relationship. She had changed, and that change was something she was proud of. Still, the invitation was tempting. It had been months since they last spoke, and although she'd moved on, part of her wondered what it would feel like to see him again. To show him that she wasn't just some girl he could easily forget, but a woman who had grown into herself. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The words she'd read in a motivational post just this morning flickered in her mind. That was the answer she needed. She had come so far, and this could be her chance to prove it not for him, but for herself. With a deep breath, Emma began typing a response. It was a simple answer, but it was enough. "I'll come, but I'm bringing someone." She sent it before she could second-guess herself. There was no turning back now. The week leading up to the party felt like a blur. Emma debated every detail: what to wear, what to say, how to handle whatever Ethan might throw her way. She knew this wasn't going to be easy. Ethan had always been good at making her doubt herself, to make her question her worth in subtle, insidious ways. But this time, she was prepared. She wasn't going to let him back in. Her decision to bring a +1 wasn't just about making a statement to Ethan, it was about showing him that she had moved on. That she wasn't defined by him or their past. She was stronger now, more independent. And her +1, Jake, was going to make that clear. Jake was more than a friend. Over the past year, they'd spent countless hours together, laughing, talking, and comforting each other after their own difficult breakups. Jake had become her confidant, someone who saw her for who she truly was. He was also easy on the eyes, a fact that Emma wasn't shy about acknowledging. She had asked Jake to come because, in a way, he was her anchor. He was the person who could keep her grounded, who would make sure she didn't get lost in the emotional drama of seeing Ethan again. Plus, if Ethan wanted to get under her skin, he'd have to deal with Jake first. "What do you think?" Emma asked Jake one evening, as they sat together in the cozy cafe they frequented, sipping on coffee and discussing the upcoming event. About what? Jake raised an eyebrow, though Emma could tell he already knew where this conversation was headed. "Ethan. And this whole party thing," she replied. "Do you think I'm crazy for going?" Jake shrugged, his usual calm demeanor making it clear that he wasn't concerned. "Honestly, I think you're doing this for yourself, not him. If you want to go, go. You don't owe anyone anything, especially not him." Emma smiled at his words. It was exactly what she needed to hear. For so long, she had lived her life according to others' expectations, especially Ethan's. Now, she was doing things her way. "So, you'll come with me, right?" she asked, a teasing smile playing on her lips. "Of course," Jake said with a laugh. "You're not going to face your ex alone. Besides, I think it'll be fun to see how this all plays out. I'm all in." Emma felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. Jake wasn't just going with her for her sake. He genuinely cared about her. And that made all the difference. The night of the party arrived, and Emma stood in front of her closet, staring at the array of clothes hanging before her. She could already imagine Ethan's smirk as he saw her walk in. He'd always liked to control how she looked, how she presented herself. He'd never approved of her more casual, bohemian style. But now, she didn't care. She pulled out a sleek black dress, one she had bought on a whim a few months ago. It was elegant, confident, and just the right balance of understated yet bold. She wanted to look good for herself, not for Ethan. When Jake arrived to pick her up, his usual laid-back vibe helped calm her nerves. He was dressed casually, but his presence made her feel at ease. As they drove to Ethan's place, Emma found herself mentally preparing for whatever the night might throw at her. But she wasn't going to let it affect her. As they parked in front of Ethan's sprawling house, Emma took one last deep breath. Tonight wasn't about Ethan or about proving something to him. It was about proving something to herself. The moment she walked into Ethan's house, the familiar scent of expensive cologne and polished wood filled her nostrils. The crowd was a mix of familiar faces and strangers, all sipping champagne and mingling. Emma took a moment to absorb the scene, scanning the room for Ethan. And there he was, across the room, smiling smugly as he greeted his guests. But when his eyes met hers, his smile faltered, just for a second. And that was all she needed to know. Ethan was rattled. He hadn't expected her to show up. And he definitely hadn't expected her to bring Jake. Emma met his gaze head-on, a calm smile playing on her lips. "Ethan," she said with a cool nod. "Emma," he replied, his voice slightly tighter than usual. He recovered quickly, but she could see the discomfort lurking behind his charming facade. This was going to be interesting. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The moment Emma stepped into the grand living room, she couldn't help but feel like an outsider in a place that had once felt like home. The walls, adorned with modern art and expensive antiques, seemed to mock her. Ethan had always loved showing off his wealth, his success. Back then, she'd been swept up in it all. He was charming, ambitious, and he had a way of making her feel like she was part of something bigger, something that glittered. But that had been before. Before she realized how much of herself she'd lost in the process. The relationship with Ethan had started like a dream. They had met at university. He was the charming, enigmatic guy everyone was drawn to, and she, the shy, studious girl who never quite felt like she fit in. Ethan had seen something in her, or at least, that's what she had believed at the time. He had made her feel special, important. But as time went on, she'd found that his attention had come at a price. He wasn't just possessive of her time, he was possessive of who she was. Her thoughts, her opinions, her desires. She'd once thought that love was about compromise, about supporting one another through thick and thin. But with Ethan, compromise meant bending until she lost her own shape. There had been little things at first. He'd criticized the way she dressed, telling her she could do better, that she wasn't showing her best self to the world. Then it had escalated to the bigger things, telling her how to think, what friends to have, where to go, what to do. He hadn't outright controlled her every move, but his influence had been subtle, like a snake curling around her, squeezing just enough to make her question her instincts. And the fightsy God, the fights. The way Ethan would turn everything around on her, making her feel like it was always her fault. She had started second-guessing herself, unsure of what was real and what was just his manipulation. The quiet moments of tension, the cold silences that stretched between them, had become the worst part of their relationship. He'd always know exactly what to say to make her feel small, insignificant. And the worst part was that she had let him. It wasn't until after they had broken up that Emma truly understood how unhealthy it had all been. She had convinced herself for so long that she had been the problem, that she wasn't good enough. But as time went on, as she distanced herself from him, Emma started to see things more clearly. Ethan's need to control, to always have the upper hand, wasn't about her at all. It was about his own insecurities. He was so scared of losing control that he tried to control everyone around him. And she had been an easy target. The breakup itself had been a mess, one of those slow, painful things that you could feel coming, but you still hoped wouldn't happen. They had tried to salvage it for months, but the cracks were too deep. One night, after another argument where Ethan accused her of not trying hard enough, Emma had packed her things and walked out. There had been no dramatic shouting match, no angry door slamming. Just the quiet, painful realization that they were better off apart. It had been hard at first. Losing him felt like losing a piece of herself, like she had to relearn who she was without him. For a while, she had been angry at him, angry at herself for not seeing the signs earlier. But eventually, that anger had turned into something else, clarity. Over the past year, Emma had worked on herself. She had surrounded herself with friends who supported her, taken up hobbies she had once abandoned, and rebuilt her life from the ground up. She had even started a new job, one she was passionate about, working with a nonprofit that helped people rebuild after trauma. It felt like every day she was rediscovering a piece of herself that she hadn't known she had lost. And then there was Jake. Jake had come into her life at just the right time. They had met through mutual friends, and at first, he had just been a fun distraction, someone to talk to over coffee or grab a quick drink with after a long week. But what started as a friendship had slowly grown into something more. Jake was everything Ethan hadn't been: patient, understanding, and supportive without being overbearing. He didn't try to change her or make her feel like she wasn't enough. He accepted her for who she was, flaws and all. And slowly, Emma had realized she was falling for him. Not in the heady, overwhelming way that she had fallen for Ethan, but in a quiet, steady way that felt more real, more authentic. Jake had always been there for her, whether she needed someone to laugh with or someone to cry to. And while they hadn't put a label on what was between them, Emma knew deep down that whatever it was more than just friendship. She was no longer the insecure woman she had once been. She was strong, independent, and she deserved someone who could see that and respect it. Tonight, however, was about Ethan. About facing him, not with bitterness or anger, but with the quiet confidence of someone who had learned her worth. It wasn't about revenge, but about reclaiming the power he had once stolen from her. As Emma glanced around Ethan's house, she caught sight of him again, his perfect smile, his carefully curated persona. He was laughing with friends, but there was something different about him tonight. Something almost desperate. It was almost as if he was trying too hard. It was the same thing she had seen so many times before when they were together. Ethan craved validation. And no matter how successful he had become, it was never enough. She didn't care about the power games anymore. She wasn't here to make him jealous, even though part of her had to admit there was a small satisfaction in seeing him look at her with that mix of surprise and confusion. Emma wasn't the same woman he had left behind. She wasn't that girl anymore. She was more. And Ethan? He was still stuck in the past, trying to prove something to himself and everyone around him. Hey, Jake's voice broke through her thoughts. He had come up behind her, standing beside her with an easy grin. You doing okay? Emma smiled at him, feeling the weight of the night lift just a little bit. Yeah, she said, her voice steady. Just remembering who I used to be. Jake gave her a look, one of understanding. Well, you're not that person anymore. You're stronger than that. She nodded, grateful for him in ways that words couldn't quite express. Tonight wasn't about her ex. It was about her and the woman she had become. "Let's go grab a drink," she said, her confidence growing with each passing second. As they moved through the crowd, Emma couldn't help but feel like she was finally walking away from the shadows of her past. She wasn't looking for validation. She didn't need it anymore. The only person who needed to see how far she had come was herself. The atmosphere in Ethan's house was electric, but beneath the chatter and clinking of glasses, Emma could feel the tension building. She wasn't sure if it was just her imagination, but it felt like every pair of eyes in the room turned toward her as she walked in, arm casually linked with Jake's. She could see it in their eyes, the curiosity, the judgment, the unspoken questions about what had really happened between her and Ethan. It wasn't the first time she'd been at an event like this after a breakup. But this time, it was different. This time, she was in control. She wasn't the broken girl clinging to a past relationship that had defined her. She was someone who had moved on, someone who had reclaimed her own story. And yet, despite the years of growth, there was still that nagging feeling. The feeling that she wasn't fully in control of the situation yet. Ethan's presence was magnetic, pulling people toward him in a way that only he could. He always had been the life of the party. But tonight, he wasn't just the charming host. There was something else in his eyes. Something dark, something unresolved. "Hey, Emma." A familiar voice cut through her thoughts, and she turned to see Kate, one of Ethan's old friends, smiling at her. Kate had always been warm and friendly, someone Emma had gotten along with during their time together. But tonight, something about Kate's smile didn't feel entirely genuine. It was a little too wide, a little too practiced. "Kate, it's good to see you," Emma said, forcing a smile and stepping forward to give her a quick hug. The brief, stiff embrace didn't go unnoticed. "So, it's been a while. You look great," Kate said, looking Emma up and down as though trying to gauge her reaction. "I didn't expect you to come tonight, to be honest." Emma raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because of Ethan." Kate's smile faltered just for a moment. "Well, things were complicated between you two. But I guess it's good you're moving on, right?" There was a subtle bite in Kate's tone, as though the words were just a little too rehearsed. Emma felt her heart rate quicken, but she kept her expression neutral. She knew that Ethan had always had people around him who were loyal to him, who had never truly understood her side of the story. And Kate was one of them. "I've moved on, for sure," Emma replied, her voice cool and steady. "I'm in a good place now." There was a flicker of something in Kate's eyes, surprise, maybe even a little guilt, but it was gone as quickly as it had appeared. "Well, that's good to hear. You deserve that." The conversation trailed off awkwardly as Kate turned her attention to someone else in the room, leaving Emma standing there with Jake. Jake, ever the smooth operator, had watched the exchange with an unreadable expression on his face, but now, as the silence lingered, he leaned in and whispered, "You okay?" Emma nodded. "Yeah, just the usual." Jake gave her a reassuring pat on the back before steering her toward the drinks table. But even as they moved away from Kate, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. And then, like a shadow, Ethan appeared at the edge of the crowd, his eyes locked on her. Emma's pulse quickened. He wasn't even trying to hide the fact that he was watching her. And it wasn't in the way a casual host might observe his guest. It was in that all-too-familiar way that made her feel like a specimen under a microscope, as if he were studying her, analyzing her every move. Jake followed her gaze and leaned closer, his voice low. "He's staring at you, huh?" Emma glanced at Jake, forcing a casual smile. "Yeah, it's like he's trying to figure me out." Again. Jake snorted. "Well, I'm not surprised. You look great tonight." Emma appreciated the compliment, but she wasn't going to let Ethan's presence dictate her mood. He had always been good at making her feel small, at making her question herself. But not anymore. Tonight, she wasn't his to manipulate. She was her own person, and if Ethan thought he could come in and still hold any power over her, he was sorely mistaken. But just as she was about to look away from Ethan and continue her conversation with Jake, Ethan made his move. He strolled across the room toward them, his smooth, practiced smile in place. He was as effortlessly confident as ever, wearing a tailored suit that hugged his frame just right. It was as if time had never passed at all. "Emma," Ethan said, his voice rich and warm as though nothing had changed between them. "You look incredible. I have to admit, I didn't expect to see you tonight, let alone looking this stunning." His gaze flickered to Jake for a brief second before returning to her, his smile never wavering. Emma felt a knot form in her stomach, but she refused to show any sign of weakness. She tilted her head slightly and smiled back. "Thank you, Ethan. It's been a long time, hasn't it?" "Too long," he said, the words smooth, calculated. "I was hoping we could catch up. You know, just the two of us." Emma's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, but she quickly recovered. She didn't want to entertain any old wounds. "I'm actually having a great time talking with Jake right now," she said, gesturing to him with an easy smile. "But I'm sure we'll talk later." Ethan's expression briefly shifted, a flicker of something resembling frustration crossing his face before he masked it with a chuckle. Of course. I wouldn't want to get in the way of your new life." He glanced again at Jake, who hadn't said a word but was now standing with arms crossed, an almost protective stance. "Well," Ethan continued, stepping back just slightly, his gaze never leaving Emma, "if you change your mind, let me know. I'd love to talk about old times." As he turned and walked away, Emma couldn't help but feel a surge of satisfaction. It was as if she had won a small battle, simply by not giving in to his familiar charm, his smooth words. She wasn't the girl he had left behind. She wasn't looking for closure. She wasn't interested in rehashing the past. She was here to enjoy herself, and she had every right to do that on her own terms. "That was interesting," Jake said, raising an eyebrow as he looked over at her. Emma shrugged, her smile returning. "Yeah, but I'm not going to let him control this night. Not anymore." Jake gave her a small grin. "Good. You've come a long way, Emma. I'm proud of you." For a moment, Emma felt a rush of warmth at his words. She wasn't alone. Not anymore. But even as she basked in the newfound strength that came from standing up to Ethan, she couldn't shake the feeling that this night wasn't over. The storm was just beginning. And as much as she wanted to leave the past behind, it seemed the past wasn't quite ready to let her go. There are moments in life that feel like the air shifts, like something's coming, and your body knows it before your mind catches up. Emma felt that shift now. The party continued in full swing around her. Music thumped softly through the walls, conversations bubbled in corners, and laughter floated like perfume. But Emma's focus was razor-sharp. She could still feel the weight of Ethan's presence pressing down on her like a hand on her shoulder. She hadn't seen him in almost a year, and yet just a few minutes of conversation had reminded her why she had walked away. Jake, ever intuitive, kept close by. He wasn't the possessive type, not like Ethan. He didn't cling or hover. He was simply there, steady and calm, like a lighthouse in a storm. "You want to head outside?" he asked, sensing her tension. "Yeah," she said, grateful for the out. They stepped through the French doors onto the back patio, where string lights dangled overhead like soft stars. The cool night air hit her skin, a relief after the charged atmosphere inside. Emma exhaled slowly. The night was beautiful, and for a moment, she let herself believe she could just enjoy it. Jake leaned against the railing, glancing at her. "So, he invited you just to catch up?" Emma laughed quietly, dry and sharp. "That's not why I think he did it." Jake turned to her. "Then why?" She paused, weighing her words carefully. "Because he wants to prove something. To me, to himself. That he's still got it. That I still want him." Maybe even that I regret leaving. Jake looked at her for a long moment. Do you? Emma blinked. Regret leaving? He nodded. No, she said firmly. I regret not leaving sooner. A flicker of something, pride, maybe, passed across Jake's face. Good. They stood there in silence for a moment, listening to the hum of the party through the open doors. The mood outside was calm, peaceful. But the peace didn't last. Emma, someone called behind them. She turned. It was Lauren, another one of Ethan's inner circle. They'd been friendly once, but after the breakup, Lauren had taken sides. Ethan's side. Which meant she'd cut Emma off completely. I didn't know you were coming tonight, Lauren said, stepping closer, her tone light but loaded. I wasn't sure I would, Emma replied. Lauren glanced at Jake, then back at her. New guy. Jake offered a polite smile. Jake. Lauren's smile didn't reach her eyes. Charming. So, just friends, or? Jake opened his mouth, but Emma answered first. He's with me. That shut Lauren up for a moment, but she recovered quickly. Well, I guess Ethan's gonna love that. Emma gave a tight smile. Why's that? Oh, Lauren said, voice like honey and knives, because he's about to announce something. And I think he was hoping you'd be here to hear it. Emma stiffened. What kind of announcement? Lauren's smile grew. You'll see. With that, she turned and walked away, back into the house. Emma and Jake exchanged a glance. What the hell does that mean? Jake asked. I don't know, Emma said, dread curling in her stomach. But I guess we're about to find out. They walked back inside, the room now buzzing with energy. Someone tapped a wine glass at the front of the room, and heads turned as Ethan stepped into the spotlight. He looked exactly as he always had when commanding attention, relaxed, smug, perfectly polished. He held a glass of champagne, the way a CEO might before dropping some big company news. Everyone, he said, thank you for coming tonight. I know it's been a crazy year, and I'm so glad we could all be together again. Old friends, new friends. His eyes flicked to Emma. And very special people from my past. Emma swallowed hard. Jake gently rested a hand on her lower back. Supportive. Steady. I wanted to share something tonight, Ethan continued. Something personal. Something exciting. The room quieted. Emma felt the knot in her stomach tighten. I'm getting engaged. The words dropped like stones. For a moment, the room was stunned into silence. Then came a polite wave of applause, clinking glasses, a few scattered cheers. But Emma wasn't clapping. She was frozen. Engaged? Before she could react, a woman appeared beside Ethan. Blonde, tall, model pretty. She gave Emma a once-over as she slid her hand around Ethan's arm. This is Camille, Ethan said, his smile widening. We met a few months ago and, well, sometimes life surprises you. Emma's mind raced. There was no way this was just coincidence. He had invited her here to see this. To show off. Jake leaned in. You okay? Emma forced a smile, her throat dry. Of course. But inside, she felt like she'd been slapped. Not because she wanted Ethan back. Not even close. But because this was classic him. Control the narrative. Be one step ahead. He hadn't just wanted to catch up, he wanted to humiliate her. To show he had won. Emma's jaw tightened. Let's get some air, she said quietly, and Jake followed her out without a word. Once outside again, Emma sat down on the edge of the patio steps, trying to collect herself. Jake crouched beside her. So, that was a move. She nodded slowly. He did this on purpose. Obviously. Emma stared out into the dark yard, stars glimmering beyond the trees. You know what's funny? She said after a while. He probably thought this would ruin me. Jake was quiet. But it doesn't. Not even close, she said, voice steadying. Because I'm not the girl he left. And he's still playing games I'm not interested in anymore. Jake gave her a small, proud smile. Then let's stop playing. Emma turned to him. What do you mean? Let's go back in there, he said, standing. And remind him you're the best thing he ever lost. Emma rose to her feet slowly, a small fire lighting in her chest. She had come to this party out of curiosity, but now it had become something else. Not revenge. Not drama. Clarity. This was her turning point. And Ethan? He was about to regret inviting her because she hadn't just moved on. She'd leveled up. The music swelled again as Emma and Jake walked back into the living room, where Ethan was still basking in the afterglow of his big announcement. Camille was by his side, laughing at something a guest had said, her hand resting on Ethan's chest like a trophy. Emma noticed how tightly Ethan gripped his champagne flute, knuckles pale against the stem, even as he smiled and nodded. That tension wasn't for show. He had noticed her reaction. And the fact that she didn't give him the breakdown he had probably been hoping for? That was eating at him. Jake leaned in and murmured. His little power move didn't land like he wanted. Emma smiled, her confidence slowly returning. Let him think he won. We both know what he really lost. They slipped back into the party, not hiding, not retreating, but reclaiming their place in the room. Emma greeted people she hadn't seen in months. Some offered awkward smiles, others gave her surprised hugs, their eyes darting to Jake with barely hidden curiosity. She knew what they were thinking. The ex-girlfriend shows up at her former boyfriend's engagement party with a date? Bold move. Let them talk. Across the room, she caught Ethan watching her again, his expression unreadable. Camille said something in his ear, and he nodded, but his gaze didn't leave Emma. And just like that, the perfect host cracked. A flash of something, frustration, jealousy, maybe even fear, passed through his eyes. There it is, Emma thought. The mask slipping. Ethan had always been calculated, always 2 steps ahead. But he had never learned to anticipate other people's growth. He still thought she was the same girl who wilted under pressure, who needed his approval to feel seen. But Emma had grown in his absence. She was no longer afraid to speak up or take up space. She had earned her healing through late-night tears, self-doubt, therapy, and rebuilding. And this party? It wasn't his victory lap. It was her proving ground. Can I get you another drink? Jake asked. Let's go for something stronger this time, she said with a smile. As Jake headed to the bar, Emma felt a presence behind her. Hey, Ethan said, voice smooth as ever. Emma turned slowly. He stood just a little too close, his signature move. Congratulations, she said, her tone polite but flat. Thanks, he replied, eyes scanning her face. Didn't expect you to show up tonight. But I'm glad you did. Are you? She asked, folding her arms. He gave her that classic Ethan grin, the one that used to melt her resolve. Come on, Em. Don't act like you're not curious. About what? About how I've moved on. About Camille. About what you missed out on. There it was. The manipulation cloaked his charm. I'm actually not curious at all, she said, calmly. But I am surprised. Not by the announcement, though. By the fact that you still think this kind of performance works on me. Ethan's smile faltered. I didn't invite you here to make you feel bad, he lied. I just thought. You thought I'd show up heartbroken and jealous, Emma interrupted, her voice steady. You thought I'd see your ring, your new girl, and regret everything. He opened his mouth, but she kept going. You needed me here, Ethan. Because deep down, you still measure your worth by how much you affect other people. And if I had cried or stormed out, that would have meant you still mattered. But I didn't, because you don't. The silence between them was deafening. The background noise of laughter and music felt a mile away. For the first time all night, Ethan looked small. Before he could speak, Jake returned with 2 drinks. He handed one to Emma and rested a hand on her shoulder, a simple gesture, but it said everything. She wasn't alone. Not anymore. Ethan's eyes flicked to Jake. His jaw tightened. Well, Ethan said, voice clipped, I guess some people don't change. Emma sipped her drink. Oh, but I did. That's what's killing you. Jake looked between them, then turned to Ethan with a casual smile. Thanks for the drinks, man. Great party. We'll be heading out soon. Emma's got early meetings. People who actually rely on her. It was a clean hit. And Ethan knew it. As they walked away, Emma felt lighter, like she'd just shed the last of something she hadn't realized she was still carrying. Closure didn't always come in soft conversations or mutual forgiveness. Sometimes it came in the form of walking away with your head high while the person who once broke you is left behind in the wreckage of their own ego. They stepped out into the cool night air once more. Was that too much? Jake asked. Emma smiled. It was perfect. You're incredible, you know that? She looked at him and, for the first time in years, truly believed it. Yeah, she said. I'm starting to. And for the first time, Ethan was just a chapter she'd already finished reading. By the time Emma and Jake reached the car, the adrenaline was wearing off, replaced by something sharper, awareness. They hadn't even buckled their seatbelts before Jake said, "You know that guy's not done, right?" Emma nodded. He never is. She stared out the window as Jake started the engine. The air was thick with the scent of late spring, wet pavement, lilac, and something sour she couldn't quite name. Maybe it was memory. They drove in silence for a few blocks. Her body buzzed with aftershocks from the confrontation. It had gone well, better than she could have hoped. She had said her piece. She had stood her ground. She had won. But that didn't mean Ethan would take the loss quietly. And sure enough, the fallout started just hours later. Emma's phone buzzed the next morning with a text from Tessa, a mutual friend who had drifted away after the breakup. Hey, weird question, but did you really try to crash Ethan's engagement party with some random rebound dude? People are talking. Emma stared at the screen. Seriously? She tapped out a reply. Nope. Got a legit invite. Brought my date. Enjoyed the shrimp. Didn't throw a drink. Or a fit. Tessa replied within seconds. Okay, that's what I figured. Just. People are saying things. Ethan made it sound like you showed up uninvited. And maybe drunk. Emma sat up in bed, the sheets bunching at her waist. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. This was Ethan's style, never attack directly. No, he preferred whispers. Seeds planted in conversations, tiny rewrites of history that bloomed into full-blown fiction. Jake walked out of the bathroom, towel slung over his shoulder. Everything okay? She held up her phone. Damage control. Apparently I showed up wasted and uninvited last night. According to Ethan's version. Jake's eyebrows lifted. Wow, that didn't take long. Nope. She tossed the phone aside, frustrated. I shouldn't be surprised. This is what he does. He can't handle being embarrassed, so he rewrites the narrative to make himself look better. Jake sat on the edge of the bed. Do you want me to say something? To someone. Emma shook her head. No. That's what he wants. A reaction. If I feed it, I validate it. Still, the sting lingered. Even though she knew it wasn't true, even though anyone who'd been there could see she'd handled herself with dignity, she also knew that Ethan's circle was tight, and his influence ran deep. Some people would believe him without question. She pulled her laptop into her lap, trying to distract herself with emails and to-do lists. But her mind kept drifting back to the party. To Lauren's smug tone. To Camille's calculating gaze. To Ethan's last words. You haven't changed. Oh, but she had. She was just done proving it. Still, the fire inside her simmered hotter now. She wasn't going to play his game, but she also wasn't going to let him paint her as unstable or desperate. Not when she had worked so damn hard to rebuild her self-worth from the ground up. By late afternoon, the story had evolved. First, it was Emma showed up uninvited. Then, she brought a date just to make Ethan jealous. And finally, she tried to make a scene, but Ethan handled it so gracefully. Gracefully? She had watched him squirm when she didn't fall apart. She had seen the crack in his smile. The worst part wasn't the gossip, it was who was spreading it. People she had once considered friends were now amplifying Ethan's version. Not because they believed it, but because it was easier to stay on the side of power than confront the truth. That was always Ethan's real strength. Not truth, but control. Emma closed her laptop and grabbed her phone again. This time, she didn't text. She opened Instagram. Her finger hovered over the new story button for a moment, and then she posted a photo from the party. Just her and Jake, standing under the string lights on the patio. Both of them smiling, calm, unbothered. Her caption was simple. "Closure looks good on me." Within minutes, the likes started rolling in. A few old friends messaged her with private notes of support. "Saw you last night. You looked incredible." Ethan was shook. "That post? Iconic. Don't let him spin it. Can't believe he's still pulling this high school drama. Stay above it. We see you." Emma smiled. This was how she would handle it. Not with arguments. Not with clapbacks. With confidence. She didn't owe anyone her side of the story. Her presence, her peace, her refusal to crumble, that was all the truth anyone needed to see. Jake came into the room, phone in hand. "So, your story's getting some heat." "Oh," she said, playing innocent. "Yup. I think half the party just realized who the real main character was last night." Emma laughed, a real, unguarded laugh. "Good." He stepped closer, looked her in the eye. "You okay?" "I am now," she said. But somewhere deep down, she knew this wasn't the end. Ethan had lost control of the narrative, and men like him didn't surrender quietly. The whisper campaign had started. Now it was time to speak louder, but on her terms. The next time Emma saw Camille, it wasn't on a phone screen or through half-whispered gossip. It was face-to-face. It had only been 4 days since the party, but the fallout was still spiraling like smoke through a crowded room. Every time Emma opened social media, there was a new vague post, a new tagged photo, a new DM asking for her side. But she stayed quiet, composed, unbothered. At least, that's what she let them think. Inside, Emma was still sifting through the tangled mess Ethan had tried to weave around her. And she was getting close to the truth. Which is why, when she walked into her favorite downtown coffee shop and saw Camille at the counter, she didn't freeze. She smiled. Camille didn't notice her at first. She stood tall, head tilted just so, dressed in an athleisure set too coordinated to be casual. Her voice, when she ordered, was sharp but sweet, like someone who's spent her life wrapping demands in politeness. Emma stepped in line behind her, quietly, waited, and then Camille turned. For half a second, her eyes widened. She didn't expect this. Not here. Not without the armor of Ethan and his curated social set. "Emma," Camille said, tone perfectly neutral. "Hi." Emma tilted her head. "Camille." They stood there in silence, the din of espresso machines and indie music filling the gap between them. Camille recovered first. "Didn't expect to see you here." "Yeah, funny how real life keeps happening after Instagram posts," Emma said lightly. Camille's smile faltered, but only for a split second. "Well," she said, clutching her cup, "I suppose it's good we bumped into each other." "I wanted to clear the air." "About what?" Emma asked, voice deceptively calm. Camille hesitated. "About the party." Emma raised an eyebrow. "You mean Ethan's performance?" Camille exhaled, then dropped the smile entirely. "Look, I didn't know he invited you until the night before." Emma didn't respond. She just watched her. "I thought it was weird, honestly," Camille went on. "He said you guys hadn't talked in over a year, and suddenly he needed you to come. I figured it was some kind of closure thing." Emma's stomach twisted, not in shock, but in confirmation. She had known Ethan wasn't over her. But hearing Camille admit it, seeing the tightness around her mouth, made it real. "He told me the invite was a courtesy," Emma said. Turns out it was bait. Camille's expression shifted, something colder settling in. "I don't really care about your history with him," she said. But if you're planning on making this some kind of drama, I'm not, Emma interrupted. But I won't let him rewrite what happened, either. And if he's telling people I showed up drunk or uninvited, then that's drama he started. Camille's jaw clenched. Ethan said you were unstable after the breakup. Emma smiled. He would say that. Makes him the victim. And are you saying he's not? Emma stepped closer, lowering her voice just enough to sharpen its edge. He broke me down, gaslit me, and walked away like none of it mattered. So no, he's not the victim. Camille didn't respond immediately. She just stared, like she was trying to figure out whether Emma was lying or whether she had just stepped into something much bigger than she understood. Emma grabbed her coffee when it was ready and turned to leave, but paused at the door. For what it's worth, she said without looking back, I hope you don't learn the truth the hard way. But if you do, just remember who tried to warn you. Outside, the air was sharp and bright. Emma took a deep breath and felt lighter. It was the first time she'd confronted Camille, and the first time she realized Camille wasn't the real threat. She was just the next one in line. The real problem? Ethan didn't want love. He wanted loyalty. And the moment Camille stopped serving his ego, she'd be where Emma had been, discarded, discredited, and blamed. Emma wasn't going to let that happen to herself again. This wasn't about revenge. This was about reclaiming the truth one lie at a time. Emma didn't lose her friends overnight. It happened in stages, like slow erosion. A canceled plan here, an unanswered text there. The likes on her posts began to dwindle. Inside jokes stopped being tagged. Group chats that used to buzz with memes and memes turned quiet the moment she entered the conversation. But now, after the engagement party, the split was clear. There were those who saw Ethan's game, and those who decided it was safer to stay on his team. On Saturday morning, Emma met her longtime friend Katie for brunch. Katie was one of the few who hadn't flinched when Emma broke things off with Ethan nearly a year ago. In fact, Katie had helped her pack up her apartment after the breakup, stuffing clothes into trash bags while making sure Emma ate something other than sadness. They met at a small corner cafe, the kind of place where the coffee was strong and the pancakes unapologetically thick. Emma was already seated when Katie arrived, sunglasses in hand and worry etched across her brow. You're everywhere right now, Katie said as she sat down. Instagram, TikTok, even my cousin texted me like, is this your friend who destroyed her ex's engagement? Emma groaned, half laughing. Did I destroy it? I thought I was incredibly mature, actually. You were, Katie said firmly, scanning the menu. But you know how people are. They don't want the truth. They want a story. Emma took a sip of her coffee, her mind drifting. It's not even the rumors that bother me. It's seeing who's spreading them. Katie leaned in. I figured you'd bring that up. So, I should tell you. Lauren's been saying some stuff. I'm not shocked. She told people Ethan only invited you as a test, to see if you'd show up and still be obsessed with him. Katie paused. And that you kind of failed. Emma laughed, dry, bitter. By showing up calm, happy, and with a hot +1? She's saying Jake was a last-minute prop. Like you begged him to come. Emma's jaw clenched. Of course she is. Katie hesitated. And not just Lauren. Mark's been chiming in too. And Taylor. Emma felt her stomach sink. Mark had been a mutual friend, one of those guys who claimed to be neutral, always trying to keep the peace. And Taylor? She'd helped Emma pick out her apartment. Shared tears over late-night wine and breakup playlists. They're scared of him, Katie said quietly. Scared of being shut out of the friend group. Or the parties. Or the clout, I guess. Emma nodded, more sad than angry. It's just disappointing. I never thought I'd have to defend my sanity to people who used to see me cry at 2 a.m. over him. Katie looked her straight in the eye. You shouldn't have to defend anything. Emma was quiet for a moment, then reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. I was going to let it die down, she said. But now? I think I need to set the record straight. Katie's eyes lit up. You mean a post? Emma smirked. Oh, more than a post. I'm going live. Katie nearly choked on her water. Now, Emma shrugged. Why not? She opened the app, hit go live, and watched the screen flicker to life. Within seconds, the viewers started climbing. 20, 50, 150. Familiar names. Curious eyes. She smiled into the camera. Calm. Confident. Hey, everyone. So, I wasn't planning on saying anything, but since there are so many versions of last weekend's party floating around, I figured I'd share mine. She paused. Her voice was steady, measured, unapologetic. Yes, I was invited. Yes, I brought a date. And no, I didn't throw a fit, cry, or try to ruin anyone's night. Katie gave her a thumbs up from across the table. If anything, Emma continued, I showed up out of curiosity and left with closure. But I've seen the rumors. And I get it, people love drama. They love a villain. But I'm not going to let anyone else write my story, especially not people who only know half of it. She leaned in slightly. And for anyone wondering why I showed up in the first place, it wasn't to win him back. It was to remind myself of everything I've outgrown. Her gaze held the camera. I hope everyone finds the kind of peace that doesn't require other people's humiliation. I really do. Then she smiled, genuinely. Okay, that's it. Back to brunch. She ended the live, tossed the phone on the table, and picked up her fork. Katie stared at her, half in awe. You just went live to drag him gently. That was like emotional jiu-jitsu. Emma grinned. I told the truth. And I didn't even need to name names. Katie's phone buzzed with notifications. Oh, yeah, she said, scrolling. They're definitely watching. Emma laughed, but this time it was light. Liberated. Let the people choose sides. She had already chosen hers. Emma hadn't known Jake long, maybe 2 months, but they'd clicked in a way that made time feel irrelevant. There was something about his calm steadiness, the way he listened, the way he didn't flinch when she talked about the mess Ethan left behind. But everyone has a past, and Jake's was about to catch up with him. It was a Wednesday afternoon when Emma first noticed something was off. They were sitting on a park bench after grabbing iced coffees, their usual midweek reset. The sky was clear, the air smelled like cut grass and sunscreen, and birds chirped overhead like it was a Disney movie backdrop. But Jake? He was distracted. Not by his phone. Not by something specific. Just elsewhere. You've been quiet today, Emma said gently, nudging him with her knee. Jake gave her a tired smile. Sorry. Just stuff on my mind. Emma waited, letting the silence invite honesty. Jake sighed. There's something I should probably tell you. Before you hear it from someone else. She sat up straighter, pulse quickening. Okay. I've dated someone in Ethan's circle before. Emma blinked. Wait, what? Jake ran a hand through his hair. It was before I met you. Just a few dates, really. Nothing serious. Her name's Sasha. Emma frowned. She recognized the name. Sasha was one of Ethan's more low-key friends. The kind who lingered on the edge of group photos, never saying much, but always watching. Jake continued. It didn't end badly. It just didn't go anywhere. But I think she mentioned it to Ethan recently. And he might be using it. Emma crossed her arms. Using it how? Jake hesitated. To make it seem like I'm with you for revenge. That I was planted. Or that you're just my way of getting back at her. Emma stared at him, stunned. Are you serious? She asked. Jake nodded slowly. I figured if you started hearing that story, I wanted you to know first. From me. Emma leaned back against the bench, staring at the sky. It was ridiculous, clearly manufactured. But also believable enough to be dangerous. Especially to the people still loyal to Ethan. Especially now, after her live video had started gaining traction. She looked at Jake. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Jake winced. Because it didn't seem important at the time. I didn't think it would matter. But then, after everything that's happened, I realized Ethan's probably digging for anything he can use to discredit you. Or us. Emma felt a familiar sense of dread creep in. Ethan was a master at manipulation, not with lies, but with twists. Just enough truth to make the poison go down smooth. Jake reached out and took her hand. I swear to you, Emma, I'm here because I want to be. Not because of her. Not because of him. Because of you. Emma held his gaze. She could see it: earnestness, regret, fear. But also, truth. She squeezed his hand. Okay, then we handle it. Jake let out a breath. You believe me? I do, she said. But believing you doesn't mean I'm not pissed he's trying to weaponize your past like this. Jake chuckled darkly. Yeah, he's persistent. He's terrified, Emma corrected. And when men like Ethan are scared, they start clawing. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from Katie. Heard from a very reliable source Ethan's spreading a news story that you're dating Jake just to make him jealous and to get back at Sasha. Unbelievable. Emma exhaled sharply, then typed a reply. Let him talk. I've got something better than gossip. I've got receipts. Jake looked at her curiously. Receipts? Emma smiled. Photos. Screenshots. DMs. We never had to expose him before, but now? If he keeps coming, I might just let people see the Ethan I knew. Jake nodded slowly. You sure you want to go down that road? Emma thought about it. For months, she had chosen the high road. She'd walked away, stayed silent, healed in private. But now? She was tired of protecting the version of him that people wanted to believe in. I'm not out for revenge, she said. But I am done being polite about the truth. Jake kissed her hand. Then I've got your back. All the way. As they sat there together, the first hints of dusk coloring the sky, Emma realized something else. She wasn't afraid of Ethan anymore. Because the difference between them was clear now. He needed control. She just needed clarity. And with Jake beside her, she had both. But secrets had a way of snowballing. And Ethan's weren't done unraveling yet. It started with a ding. Emma wasn't expecting anything. She was halfway through a meal prep Sunday, up to her elbows in lemon garlic chicken and Spotify playlists. Jake was chopping vegetables at the counter, and the world felt momentarily, blissfully quiet. Then came the second ding. And the third. Emma wiped her hands, grabbed her phone, and blinked at the notification. Instagram DM from @GirlCaladeria. Hey, you don't know me, but I think you should see this. Attached, a screenshot. Emma opened it, half expecting another rumor or fake story. But this? This wasn't gossip. This was Ethan on full display. The screenshot was from a private message thread. Ethan had messaged Aria, a girl Emma vaguely recognized from college, with a series of messages that made her stomach twist. Ethan, you know Emma? I'm trying to warn people. She's not well. Ethan, she's been obsessively trying to ruin my relationship. Ethan, she's with that Jake guy now. Don't believe for a second it's real. Ethan, honestly, I'm worried for her mental health. Emma stared at the screen. Cold fury settled in her chest like a brick. Jake leaned over her shoulder. What is it? She turned the screen toward him silently. He read it once, then again. Wow, he muttered. He's really trying to paint you as unstable. Emma's hands were shaking, but not from fear. From clarity. This wasn't just Ethan spinning a narrative anymore. This was character assassination. He was reaching out to people from her past, friends, acquaintances, even strangers, to build a version of her that would justify everything he'd done. It was beyond petty. It was calculated. And it was the final straw. She messaged Aria back. Thank you. I really appreciate you sending this. May I share it publicly? Aria replied almost instantly. Absolutely. He's done this to other girls too. I'm sick of it. Emma didn't even hesitate. She opened Instagram, selected New Story, and uploaded the screenshot. But before posting, she added a caption. When someone lies this confidently, believe they've done it before. And they'll do it again. This isn't just about me anymore. This is about every woman who's ever been called crazy for leaving someone manipulative. She hit post. Within minutes, the reactions came flooding in. The story was reshared, commented on, DMED. People were furious. Women especially. They'd seen this pattern before. Lived it. And some shocking, even Emma had receipts of their own. One by one, they started messaging her. I dated him briefly 2 years ago. Same exact tactics. He told people I was stalking him after I ended things. Girl, he told my best friend I was suicidal so they wouldn't believe me. Thank you for saying something. I thought I was alone. Emma sat back, stunned. This wasn't an isolated pattern. This was Ethan's brand. Jake looked over her shoulder, his jaw tight. He's not just toxic. He's dangerous. Emotionally abusive, at the very least. Emma nodded, heart pounding not with fear, but with resolve. For the first time, the story wasn't about heartbreak. It wasn't about jealousy. It wasn't about petty drama. It was about survival. And how often women had been forced to keep quiet to stay above it, while the abuser curated a reputation of charm, wit, and benevolence. Not anymore. Emma opened her notes app and started typing a new post. She didn't want to make it theatrical. She wanted it honest. Unfiltered. I stayed silent because I didn't want to be called bitter. Or dramatic. Or difficult. I thought walking away was enough. But when someone lies about your sanity to protect their own ego, silence becomes complicity. This is me saying, I'm done protecting the version of him you know. The truth is uncomfortable, but it's freeing. To every woman who's been called unstable after setting a boundary, this is for you. You're not crazy. You were right. Hashtag the truth is louder. The post went viral by midnight. Thousands of likes. Hundreds of comments. Dozens of reshares. Strangers and friends alike posted support, solidarity, and their own stories. Emma couldn't keep up. But she didn't need to. Because for the first time, the narrative wasn't being taken from her. She had taken it back. Jake put a hand on her shoulder. You just set something in motion. Emma stared at her screen, at the flood of messages, and whispered, good. Because Ethan's manipulation had finally met its match. Not revenge. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The floodgates opened. What began as one woman speaking out turned into a chorus. Overnight, Emma's inbox transformed into a confessional booth. Women from across cities, some familiar, others strangers, shared stories that echoed her own. There were different names, different timelines, different faces, but the tactics? Uncannily similar. Gaslighting. Smear campaigns. Love bombing followed by devaluation. And the same chilling phrase repeated in their messages. I thought it was just me. Emma sat on her couch, laptop open, reading through each DM. Jake sat beside her, silent, supportive, his arm resting lightly across the back of the couch. The weight of their collective trauma was heavy, but Emma had never felt more certain of her voice or more deeply connected to the women reclaiming theirs. Some stories were brief, casual flings that ended in confusion and emotional whiplash. Others described years of manipulation, isolation, and shame. One woman even wrote, he told my boss I had emotional issues after I tried to leave. I lost a promotion because of it. Another, he threatened to ruin me if I ever spoke up. Thank you for making the first move. You've no idea what it means. Emma's hands trembled as she typed responses, each one sincere. I believe you. You're not alone. You did nothing wrong. Thank you for trusting me with this. She created a private email just for collecting these stories and posted about it publicly. If you've had a similar experience and want to share it, anonymously or not, I'm listening. We don't have to let people like this hide behind charm anymore. Your story matters. The responses doubled, tripled. Women didn't just want to speak, they needed to. That same night, Katie called. I think you're starting something bigger than you realized, she said, her voice reverent. Emma nodded, though Katie couldn't see it. I didn't mean to start a movement. I just couldn't stay quiet anymore. Sometimes, that's how they start. Katie hesitated, then added, you should know, someone reached out to me too. A girl from Ethan's past. Long before you. Emma felt her heart thump. What did she say? She said he did the same thing to her. Made her think she was broken. Ruined her friendships. But back then, people didn't talk about this kind of thing. She said if you're going public, she wants to help. Emma exhaled slowly. This was what Ethan was afraid of. Not just her truth, but all of them standing together. And she understood now, this wasn't just about healing. It was about undoing the silence he had counted on. The next morning, Emma received an unexpected call. It was a journalist from a popular digital media outlet. They'd seen her post, followed the traction, and wanted to interview her, not about her breakup, but about the pattern. The culture. The way manipulative partners use social capital to discredit survivors. We're doing a piece on the weaponization of sanity, the reporter said. The way women are painted as crazy or unstable to control the post-breakup narrative. Your story is powerful, but more importantly, it's relatable to so many. Emma's hands shook as she said yes. She wasn't a celebrity. She wasn't an influencer. But she was a woman who had lived it. And now she was becoming the voice she'd needed when she was drowning in self-doubt, wondering if anyone would ever believe her. Later that day, Jake joined her on a walk through the park. The leaves were starting to thicken on the trees again, shadows stretching longer in the afternoon sun. Emma felt like she was walking through a world that had shifted, but in a good way. You okay? Jake asked, bumping her shoulder. Better than okay, she said. I'm just overwhelmed. But in the best way. Jake nodded. What you're doing? It matters. I didn't realize how much until now, Emma admitted. It's one thing to survive something. It's another to name it and watch it unlock other people's courage. She paused, then looked at him. I think this is what healing looks like. Not just forgetting and moving on, but standing up, speaking out, and saying, this happened. And I deserve better. Jake smiled, proud. You're not just rewriting your story. You're giving other people permission to rewrite theirs too. Emma looked out at the path ahead. Ethan hadn't responded publicly. Not yet. But she knew he was watching. Waiting. Planning his next move. It didn't matter anymore. Because now, he wasn't the one with the power. They were. For days, Ethan had been silent. No subtweets. No posts. No fake motivational quotes vaguely aimed at Emma. Not even his usual gym selfies that conveniently appeared after drama, an old trick he used to prove how unbothered he was. But Emma knew silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. So when Ethan finally posted, it wasn't a selfie. It was a long, carefully worded notes app screenshot, posted to his Instagram stories and cross-posted to Facebook for maximum visibility. Jake was the one who saw it first. Hey, he said, knocking lightly on the doorframe of Emma's bedroom. It's up. Emma didn't even have to ask. She grabbed her phone and saw the headline. My side of the story. Please read. Her stomach twisted, but not from fear. From the calculated boldness. She opened the image. Hey everyone. I've stayed quiet for a while because I didn't want to make a private situation even messier. But the stories going around right now are painting an incredibly skewed picture of me and my past. I've never claimed to be perfect. I've made mistakes. I've been in toxic dynamics on both sides. But what's happening now isn't about healing. It's about humiliation. People are using bits and pieces of my past to craft a version of me that isn't real. I've seen DMs, screenshots, even edited messages being shared. And while I respect anyone's right to speak their truth, I also think truth should include context. I'm not here to tear anyone down. I'm not naming names. But I hope everyone watching this right now takes a moment to ask themselves, what's the goal here? Because if it's healing, we should be having private conversations, not trying to cancel each other publicly. Emma stared at it. A laugh, dry and humorless, escaped her lips. Jake raised an eyebrow. Classic deflection. It's a masterclass in non-apology, Emma muttered. He plays the victim, paints me as a bully, and never once denies anything directly. Just vague statements and gaslighting in text form. She refreshed the story. He had added another slide. Also, for anyone asking about the engagement party, yes, I invited someone from my past. I thought it was a sign of maturity. I didn't expect it to become ammunition. If I could go back, I'd do it differently. But I never meant to hurt anyone. That's not who I am. Let's be better to each other. Jake snorted. He's playing peacemaker now? Emma shook her head. No. He's playing persecuted saint. The guy who tried to stay civil until the angry woman made it public. Her phone started buzzing again. Messages, tags, story shares. People were already reacting, some defending him, others furious. One from Katie popped up. Just saw Ethan's post. You okay? Want to go nuclear? Emma smiled at that. Not yet, she replied. She took a deep breath, walked to the kitchen, and poured herself a glass of water. Jake followed, silent. What are you thinking? He asked. I'm thinking he just gave me the green light. Jake tilted his head. To respond. No, she said slowly. To show who he really is. Not with accusations. With proof. Because while Ethan was busy twisting the narrative, Emma had been saving everything. Not out of spite. Out of self-preservation. Old texts. Voicemails. Screenshots from friends. Timelines. Even video clips, recordings she'd taken when he'd raised his voice in restaurants, then laughed it off like she was too sensitive. He wanted context? He was about to get it. That night, Emma drafted a post. Not a story. Not something that would disappear in 24 hours. A full, honest, dated timeline. With screenshots embedded. With names blacked out except for Ethan's. Because he made it public. Now she was finishing the story. Before hitting post, she turned to Jake. Do you think this makes me just as bad as him? Jake paused. No. Because you're not making it up. You're showing what already happened. If people don't like it, that's their discomfort, not yours. Emma nodded, took one more breath, and posted. Since Ethan wants context, here it is. I didn't ask for this attention. I didn't start with screenshots. But I won't let someone smear my name to protect his own. This is the truth. Read it all. Or don't. But I'm done being polite about pain. Hashtag let the record show. Hashtag emotional abuse is still abuse. Hashtag believe women. By midnight, her post had gone viral, again. Only this time, it wasn't just empathy. It was outrage. Even people who had once sided with Ethan were turning. Because the evidence? It was damning. Manipulative messages. Inconsistencies. Gaslighting spelled out in black and white. And once the mask came off, people saw him clearly. For the first time, Ethan didn't have the last word. Emma did. And she wasn't done yet. 2 days. That's how long it took for Ethan to respond to the backlash. 48 hours of silence after Emma's bombshell post. An expose that painted the full picture with timestamps, screenshots, and unmistakable patterns. It trended locally. It was picked up by mid-tier bloggers. It sparked a bigger conversation than Emma had ever imagined. She wasn't just a woman who'd walked away. She was now a symbol for every person who had ever been told their trauma was just drama. And Ethan? He was losing his grip. So when he finally posted again, it wasn't through Instagram. It was on LinkedIn. Because of course it was. The post was titled, Owning Our Mistakes, a reflection on growth, accountability, and mental health. Emma nearly dropped her phone when she saw it. LinkedIn? Jake said, peering over her shoulder with a mix of disbelief and amusement. Seriously? She opened the post and skimmed. It's been a challenging week. I've taken time to reflect on the impact of my words and actions, not just recently, but in past relationships and interactions. I recognize that there are people I've hurt. Whether intentionally or not, that hurt is real, and I take full responsibility for it. We live in a culture that doesn't always make space for men to be vulnerable or to acknowledge when we're wrong. But I believe growth comes from listening, from learning. I want to apologize to those I've affected, especially Emma. I understand now how my behavior contributed to her pain. I'm committed to doing better. I hope this serves as a reminder that real accountability isn't loud. It's quiet. It's consistent. And it starts with humility. Wow, Emma muttered, setting the phone down. He hit all the buzzwords. Jake raised an eyebrow. You buying any of it? She didn't answer right away. She wanted to. A tiny part of her wanted to believe that he'd finally looked in the mirror. That the man who gaslit her, smeared her, invited her to his engagement party to gloat, might actually be capable of remorse. But deep down, she knew better. Because apologies are only as real as what comes after. And Ethan? He hadn't taken down any of the lies. He hadn't corrected the story he told his inner circle. He hadn't reached out to the women he'd targeted before her. He'd simply posted a polished, buzzword-filled essay for a professional audience. Emma scrolled down the comments. Corporate coaches. Startup brothers wannabe TED speakers. So brave, man. This is leadership. Growth mindset on full display. Wow. Takes a real man to admit this. She slammed the phone down. Jake placed a hand on her shoulder. You don't owe him a reaction. Emma nodded. I know. But still, the anger bubbled. Because Ethan's post wasn't for her. It wasn't even for the women he hurt. It was for his image. An apology built for optics. Not accountability. A few hours later, Emma opened her Instagram story and posted a black screen with plain white text. An apology without changed behavior is just manipulation in disguise. Don't be fooled by big words and bigger egos. She didn't name him. She didn't have to. The responses flooded in instantly. This. Say it louder. He really thought a LinkedIn post was gonna fix it, huh? The nerve of that man. Katie called within minutes, practically breathless. LinkedIn? Are you serious? What's next? A Medium article called, My Ex Taught Me Empathy. Emma laughed genuinely for the first time in days. I wouldn't put it past him. But something deeper was happening too. As the fake apology circulated, people began comparing it to her story. The receipts, the pattern. And slowly, Ethan's carefully crafted persona began to crack. One by one, his defenders fell silent. Some messaged Emma to apologize. Others deleted old posts, unfollowed him, or quietly distanced themselves. Even Lauren, the girl who'd once blamed Emma for ruining Ethan's happiness, removed the heart emoji from all her comments on his feed. I think people are starting to see it, Jake said as they lay in bed that night. Not just what he did, but how he spins it. Emma looked up at the ceiling, voice soft. It's weird. For so long, I thought if he ever apologized, I'd feel better. Seen. But now that it's here, I don't feel anything. Jake turned to her. That's because you outgrew the need for his validation. She smiled. I think you're right. The next morning, Emma made one final post about Ethan. Not dramatic. Not emotional. Just this. Apology accepted. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. And moving on doesn't mean staying silent. Then she closed the app, turned off her phone, and went outside. Because some battles don't end when your enemy surrenders. They end when you realize you've already won. The phone call came unexpectedly. It was early afternoon when Emma's phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number flashing on the screen. She answered on impulse, almost absent-mindedly, while packing a bag to meet Jake for lunch. Hello. There was a beat of silence on the other end. Is this Emma? The voice was soft, almost hesitant, but unmistakably familiar. Emma paused, her stomach dropping. Who is this? She asked, suddenly alert. The voice faltered. This is Megan. I'm Ethan's fiancé. The words hung in the air, sharp and sudden, like a slap. Emma's heart skipped a beat, then picked up speed. The knot in her stomach tightened as reality set in. His fiancé? For a long moment, she didn't speak. The image of Megan, Ethan's fiancé, flashed in Emma's mind. The woman who had unknowingly entered his life after Emma. The woman Ethan had made promises to, just as he had once made them to her. The woman who would be heartbroken when she found out the truth. I saw your post, Megan continued, her voice shaky now. About Ethan. And I don't know what to believe anymore. Emma felt a strange mix of sympathy and anger swirl inside her. Megan didn't deserve this. She didn't deserve to be blindsided by Ethan's manipulation, just as Emma hadn't. I'm not here to hurt you, Emma said carefully. I'm just telling the truth. I'm sorry you're finding out like this. I thought we were getting married soon, Megan said, her voice breaking. I didn't know about any of this. I had no idea. Emma's heart ached for her. She didn't deserve this. But neither did Emma. Neither did any of them. I know, Emma said softly. You didn't. But you deserve to know the truth before you walk down that aisle. You deserve to make your decisions with the full picture, not just what he wants you to believe. There was a long pause, and Emma could practically hear Megan's mind racing as she processed everything. I need to understand, Megan said finally, her voice low but firm. What exactly did he do to you? Emma inhaled sharply, weighing her words carefully. This wasn't about revenge. This wasn't about hurting Ethan. This was about giving Megan the full picture so that she could make her own decisions based on facts, not his carefully constructed lies. I didn't start it, Emma began. Ethan and I were together for a while, but he wasn't who he said he was. He used me, manipulated me. He made me doubt myself, made me feel like I was crazy every time I questioned something. I wasn't perfect, but I never deserved what he did. Emma's throat tightened. He gaslit me. He made me feel small, like everything that went wrong was my fault. And when I left, he started playing the victim. He lied about me. He spun stories to make it seem like I was unstable, like I was the problem. I was just trying to protect myself. Megan was silent, but Emma could hear her taking deep breaths on the other end of the line. I don't know what to say, Megan whispered finally. How am I supposed to trust him now? If everything you're saying is true, how do I even look at him? Emma closed her eyes, knowing how painful it must be. She had been in Megan's shoes once, trying to make sense of the contradictions, the lies, the half-truths that Ethan had spun around her life. I can't tell you what to do, Emma said softly. I'm not asking you to make a decision right now. But I just want you to know that if you need someone to talk to, I'm here. There was a long pause, and Emma wasn't sure what Megan was thinking. But when Megan spoke again, her voice sounded more grounded, more resolved. Thank you for being honest. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I need to talk to him. I need to hear him say it if he even can. Emma nodded, even though Megan couldn't see it. Take your time. Do what you need to do. Just know that you're not alone in this. If you need someone to lean on, I'm here. After a few more words of reassurance, Megan hung up. Emma sat there for a moment, her heart heavy, feeling the weight of what had just happened. She knew that Megan's world was about to shift, dramatically. No one deserves to feel betrayed by someone they trust, especially not the person they're about to marry. But then again, that was the point of Ethan's manipulation. He took what people trusted and twisted it, slowly eroding the truth until no one was sure what was real anymore. Emma took a deep breath and exhaled slowly, setting the phone down. She wasn't a hero in this story. She wasn't here to save anyone. But she was here to speak her truth. And if that meant offering someone else the chance to escape the same pattern, then she'd done her part. "Everything okay?" Jake asked, entering the room and sitting down beside her, concern evident in his eyes. Emma nodded slowly. "Yeah, she knows now. Megan knows." Jake took her hand gently. "And she's going to talk to him." "I don't know what she's going to do, but at least she has the truth now." Jake squeezed her hand. "You did the right thing. It's up to her now." Emma looked out the window, feeling a mix of exhaustion and relief wash over her. She had done her part. Now it was time to let the chips fall where they may. Ethan had never been good at handling consequences. Sure, he'd prided himself on his cool, collected persona, the guy who had everything under control. But there was a difference between controlling a narrative and controlling reality, and Ethan was about to learn that difference the hard way. It all started with Megan. Emma wasn't sure how long it took for her to reach Ethan after their phone call. A few hours, maybe. A day at most. But what she didn't know was that by the time Ethan found out what Megan had learned, everything had already started to unravel. The first sign that things were shifting came in the form of a text from Katie. Ethan just posted again, apologizing to Megan. "What do you think?" Emma frowned. Apologizing again? What did that even mean? She opened Instagram, half expecting another one of Ethan's trademark deep thoughts posts. But this time, there was a difference. Instead of his usual vague, corporate speak apology, this one was raw, almost desperate in tone. "I was wrong. I've hurt the people closest to me. I've lied. I've manipulated. And I don't know if I can fix what I've broken. Megan, I owe you more than just an apology. I owe you honesty. You've always been so good to me. I've never deserved you, and now I'm seeing how much damage I've done. I've hurt Emma, yes, but I've hurt you more. And I'm so sorry for that. I never wanted to cause you pain. I was selfish. I was careless. I didn't think it would catch up to me, but it has. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope you'll see this for what it is, me finally owning up to my mistakes." Emma stared at the post, her stomach churning. She couldn't decide whether to laugh or feel sorry for him. There was no accountability in his words. Just more excuses, more pleading. And now, it seemed, Megan was his latest casualty. She knew exactly what had happened. Ethan had gotten the shock of his life when Megan confronted him. But instead of facing the music, he tried to put a band-aid over the situation, throwing out another empty apology, hoping it would save him from the fallout. But it was too late. The cracks had already started to form. Jake came up behind her, glancing at the phone. He's really trying to play the remorse card now. Emma shook her head. It's not real. It's a performance. If he really wanted to show he's changed, he wouldn't just post a text. He'd act like he was sorry. But he's just trying to control the narrative again. He knows he's losing. Katie texted again, her message showing a picture of a post from Ethan's best friend, Tony. Tony had been Ethan's ride or die for years, the kind of friend who always had his back no matter what. But even Tony had turned on him. "Not the time for this, man. You can't keep hurting people and expect apologies to fix it. Megan deserves more than empty words." It was the final blow. Emma put the phone down, her hands shaking. She hadn't expected it to happen like this. She hadn't expected Ethan to lose the support of everyone around him in one fell swoop. But here they were, Ethan, the man who thought he could dodge consequences, now standing alone. Did he really think he could just keep manipulating people and get away with it? Emma asked, voice almost disbelieving. Jake leaned against the kitchen counter. Maybe. Or maybe he was banking on people not paying attention, thinking his charm would be enough to get him through. "Well, it's not," Emma said, her voice low but steady. "He's finally running out of people to deceive." The next few days were a whirlwind. The fallout from Ethan's apology, if you could even call it that, spread like wildfire. Megan had unfollowed him on social media. Tony had publicly called him out for being a toxic friend, and more people from Ethan's past started speaking up. There were more stories, more receipts, more people coming forward with their own experiences of being manipulated, lied to, or gaslit. It wasn't just Emma anymore. Ethan's carefully built life of lies was crumbling under the weight of the truth. Emma didn't care about the spectacle. It wasn't her responsibility to make Ethan feel bad about himself. He'd done that all on his own. But the fact that it was happening, and that people were finally seeing through his mask, gave her a strange sense of closure. She hadn't even realized how much she needed that until now. It was Saturday afternoon when Megan reached out again. Emma hadn't expected her to contact her, but she wasn't surprised, either. "Hey, I don't know what to do with myself right now," Megan texted. "Ethan and I talked, but I don't know if I can believe anything he says anymore. I don't know who he is. Everything I thought I knew is shattered." Emma sat down on the couch and stared at the message for a while, her heart heavy with empathy. She knew the feeling. That moment when everything you thought was real turns out to be a lie. When the foundation you built your life on crumbles beneath your feet. She typed back slowly, carefully. "I'm really sorry you're going through this. I know how much it hurts, and I know it's going to take time to process everything. But just know you're not alone in this. I'm here if you need to talk." Megan replied almost immediately. "Thank you. I don't even know what I want right now. I don't know if I can forgive him. But I'm so glad you were honest with me. I needed to know the truth." Emma let out a breath she didn't even realize she'd been holding. She knew Megan wasn't ready for answers yet. But the first step toward healing was always the hardest, and for Megan, it seemed she was just beginning that journey. Later that night, Emma was scrolling through social media when she saw something that made her heart stop. It was Ethan's last post, the one where he apologized to Megan. But this time, there was a new comment. Megan had commented, "I can't do this anymore, Ethan. I need to let you go. I need to heal. I'm done." It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it was everything. Ethan had lost her. And this time, there would be no turning back. The fallout was swift, and it was brutal. Ethan's life, once filled with carefully curated moments of success and control, was now in freefall. What had started as a small crack in his image, the kind of thing he could usually patch up with a well-timed apology, had turned into a full-blown collapse. The support he once had, the people who had stood by him even through his flaws, were now turning their backs one by one. Megan had left him. She had ended it quietly, without drama, but her message was loud and clear. There would be no second chances. Ethan had no one left to run to. Even his closest friends, the ones who had known the man he used to be, were starting to speak out. Tony had posted a public statement distancing himself from Ethan, calling out the lies and manipulations. Others in Ethan's social circle followed suit, their silence giving way to uncomfortable truths. People were tired of covering for him, tired of excusing his behavior. And Emma? Emma was moving forward. It had taken a while for her to get to this point, this place, where she no longer felt the need to look over her shoulder at the wreckage of her past relationship. She'd been burned. She'd been gaslit. She'd been humiliated. But she wasn't going to let that define her. She wasn't going to let Ethan keep taking up space in her mind any longer. She'd taken the time to reflect, to heal, to focus on her career and her friends, and most importantly, on herself. But more than that, she'd begun to feel the quiet stirrings of something new in her life. Something she hadn't expected. Jake. They'd kept things simple, casual at first, but it was clear to both of them that what they had was real. She wasn't trying to force anything. She wasn't trying to put labels on it. But Jake made her laugh. He made her feel seen. And with him, she didn't have to pretend to be anything other than who she was. "Hey, you good?" Jake asked one evening, glancing over at Emma as they sat together on the couch in her apartment, sipping wine and watching a movie. "Yeah," she said, a smile tugging at her lips. I'm good. Jake raised an eyebrow. I don't think you're just good. You look more than good. You look like you've finally found peace. Emma took a deep breath and let it out slowly. I think I have. I've been through a lot the past couple of months, and I think I needed to let go of all the anger and the hurt. It wasn't helping me. It was holding me back. Jake leaned back, his expression softening. You deserve all the peace in the world. I'm glad you found it. You've been through hell, but you're stronger for it. Emma nodded, feeling the weight of his words. She hadn't fully realized how much she needed to hear that until now. She had been through hell, but she was emerging from it, slowly, steadily, and she was going to be okay. Meanwhile, Ethan's world continued to crumble around him. His apology to Megan hadn't been enough to patch things up, and the damage to his reputation was more than he could fix. No one was buying his act anymore. He was no longer the charming, confident man who had used his charisma to get out of every situation. Now, he was just a man trying and failing to put together the pieces of a life that had fallen apart. He had lost the respect of his friends. His professional network was distancing themselves from him, unable to trust someone with such a tarnished image. His own family had begun to distance themselves, realizing that the stories Emma and others had shared were not just drama. Ethan had underestimated the power of truth. And now he was learning the hardest lesson of all. The truth doesn't just set you free. It can also destroy you. A few weeks later, Emma received a message she hadn't expected. It was from Ethan. The message was simple. I never meant for any of this to happen. I've lost everything. I'm sorry. I've been trying to fix things, but it feels like there's no way back. I know I hurt you. I know I hurt Megan. But I don't know how to fix any of it anymore. Emma stared at the message for a long time before she responded. She knew exactly what this was. It wasn't an apology. It was a plea for sympathy. A cry for help from someone who had used others for so long, only to find himself with nothing. She didn't need to respond. She didn't owe him anything. But she couldn't leave him hanging in his self-pity either. He had tried to break her down for so long. This was her final act of strength, and she knew it. I don't need an apology, Ethan. You can't fix everything you've broken. And I've moved on. I'm finally living my life, and I don't need your drama in it. I'm sorry you're struggling, but I can't help you. She didn't expect a reply, and true to form, there wasn't one. She knew then that Ethan had reached his breaking point. He was no longer the man who could manipulate, charm, and deceive his way through life. He was just another guy trying to pick up the pieces of a shattered existence. And as much as Emma had once hoped for closure, this was it. She didn't need him to apologize. She didn't need him to beg for her forgiveness. Because in the end, she was the one who had come out on top. 2 weeks later, Emma and Jake took a weekend trip to a small town near the coast. It was quiet, peaceful, exactly what she needed after everything that had happened. As they walked along the beach, hand in hand, Emma realized something. She wasn't just free of Ethan. She was free of the past, too. And that was something she'd never thought she'd be able to say. The salty breeze from the ocean tousled Emma's hair as she walked beside Jake, the rhythmic sound of the waves crashing against the shore filling the silence between them. The small coastal town was peaceful, its charm unpretentious and easy. Emma had never been one to enjoy tourist traps. She had always preferred the quiet, the kind of places that allowed her to think without distractions. As they strolled, Jake's fingers brushed against hers, a subtle yet meaningful gesture that made her heart flutter. There was something about being here, away from the chaos of her everyday life, that allowed her to breathe deeply for the first time in months. Her mind kept returning to the email Ethan had sent her a few days ago, the one where he had admitted his mistakes, the one where he had finally acknowledged the damage he had caused. But it hadn't affected her the way she thought it might. Her response had been simple, final, and without regret. I don't need an apology, Ethan. You can't fix everything you've broken. And I've moved on. I'm finally living my life, and I don't need your drama in it. I'm sorry you're struggling, but I can't help you. It was a quiet form of closure. It wasn't about forgiveness. It was about peace. As they continued to walk, Jake broke the silence, his voice soft but sincere. You've come a long way, you know that? Emma smiled. Yeah, I guess I have. She looked out at the horizon, the colors of the setting sun casting a golden hue over the water. I didn't think I could ever get here. After everything with Ethan, I thought I'd be stuck forever. But here I am. Jake nodded, his expression warm. You're stronger than you think. And you deserve to be happy. Emma's heart swelled. She'd heard those words from friends before, but hearing them from Jake, someone who had seen the rawest parts of her, someone who didn't judge her for her past, made them feel even more significant. Thank you, she said, her voice thick with emotion. For being here. For not rushing things. For just letting me be. It means more to me than you know. Jake smiled, his thumb brushing over the back of her hand. You don't have to thank me. I'm here because I want to be. The simplicity of his words, the sincerity in his gaze, it all felt so real. Emma had spent so much of her life chasing after people who never valued her for who she truly was. With Jake, she didn't have to chase anything. He was just there, in the moment, with her. The next few days were a blur of quiet mornings and scenic walks, dinners at local seafood restaurants, and late-night talks about their hopes for the future. For the first time in a long time, Emma felt like she was living for herself, not for anyone else's approval. She had spent so many years trying to prove her worth to Ethan, to her friends, to her family, but now she was proving something to herself. That she was enough. It wasn't always easy. There were still days when the scars from her past seemed to flare up, when memories of Ethan's betrayal crept into her mind. But every time those thoughts came, she gently reminded herself of what she had learned. She had survived. She was stronger than she had given herself credit for. As Emma sat on the balcony of their small rented cabin that evening, looking out at the peaceful waters of the bay, Jake walked up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. You're lost in thought, he observed quietly. Emma smiled and leaned back into him. I'm just thinking about how far I've come. How much I've changed. Jake kissed the top of her head. Change is good. It's how we grow. She turned in his arms, her gaze meeting his. I know you've been patient with me, but I don't want to wait anymore. I'm ready for whatever comes next. Jake's smile widened, and in his eyes, Emma could see the warmth and trust that had slowly been building between them. It wasn't a love story written in grand gestures, but in the quiet, everyday moments. And that was enough. I'm ready too, Jake said softly. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together. Emma felt a tear slip down her cheek, but this time, it wasn't from sadness. It was from something else, something deeper. A feeling of freedom, of finally letting go of the weight that had burdened her for so long. Thank you, she whispered, for helping me find my way. Jake cupped her face in his hands, his touch tender. You were always on the right path, Emma. You just had to see it for yourself. Back in the city, Ethan's life was still in turmoil. Despite his public apology, despite the weeks of trying to piece things back together, he was struggling. The loneliness that had once been masked by his charm and bravado had now become overwhelming. His social media following had dwindled, his professional life was in shambles, and the people who once had his back were nowhere to be found. The loneliness was suffocating, and Ethan knew, deep down, that it was his own doing. The facade he had built over the years had finally cracked. The people he had used, manipulated, and discarded one by one, they had moved on. It was only a matter of time before he had to confront the truth. But that truth came with a cost. The realization that there was no going back, no way to undo the damage he had caused, weighed heavily on him. Ethan wasn't sure how he was going to fix things, or if it was even possible. He couldn't call on his old connections for help. They had seen through him. They had all seen the man he truly was, and that man was no longer welcome. As for Emma, she was no longer looking over her shoulder. She wasn't waiting for Ethan to apologize or for things to go back to the way they once were. She had stepped into a new chapter of her life, one that was full of promise and potential. And as she walked alongside Jake in that small coastal town, hand in hand, she knew she had made the right choice. She had let go of the past, and in doing so, she had found a future worth embracing. The sun was just beginning to rise over the horizon, casting a soft golden light across the quiet streets of the coastal town. Emma and Jake had spent the night in the warmth of each other's company, and now, as the world slowly came to life around them, Emma felt something inside her stir, a sense of calm, a knowing that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The morning was filled with the hum of possibility, the kind of stillness that makes you believe anything is possible. For the first time in a long while, Emma felt grounded. She was no longer tangled in the mess of her past, nor was she chasing something that no longer served her. She was here, in this moment, surrounded by the present and everything it had to offer. "Morning," Jake said, his voice a warm whisper as he wrapped an arm around her waist. He was still half asleep, but there was something about the way he looked at her that made Emma's heart flutter. It wasn't the intensity of the early days of their relationship, when everything was new and exciting. No, it was something deeper now, a quiet, steady understanding between them. "Morning," she replied, resting her head on his shoulder as they stood on the porch of their rented cabin, watching the waves ripple gently along the shore. They didn't need words at that moment. The silence between them was comforting, like an old, familiar blanket wrapped around them. The kind of silence that spoke louder than any conversation could. Eventually, Jake broke the stillness. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, his voice low. Emma smiled, looking out at the sea as she gathered her thoughts. "I'm thinking about how much I've changed. How different my life feels now. I'm not weighed down by regret or the fear of what's to come anymore. It's like I'm finally free." Jake nodded, his eyes soft with affection. "You've come a long way, Emma. I'm really proud of you." The words meant more to her than she could express. She'd spent so long struggling with self-doubt, questioning her worth, but now, with Jake, she didn't have to wonder. He had seen her at her lowest, had witnessed the pain she carried from the past, and yet he was still here. And it wasn't because of pity, it was because he valued her. "I think I'm ready to take the next step," she said, her voice suddenly filled with determination. Jake tilted his head slightly, sensing the change in her tone. "What do you mean?" Emma turned to face him, her heart racing with a mixture of excitement and nerves. "I mean, I'm ready to be more than just getting through life. I want to build something real, something lasting." Jake smiled, his eyes sparkling with pride. "You don't have to take that step alone, Emma. I'm right here with you." Emma smiled back, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. She had no idea where their future would take them, but for the first time in a long while, she wasn't afraid to walk into it. The days that followed were filled with new discoveries and shared experiences. Emma and Jake explored the small coastal town, visiting local coffee shops, hiking through nearby trails, and watching sunsets that seemed to last forever. It was as though time slowed down for them here, in this place where no one knew their pasts and they could just be. As the days passed, Emma found herself dreaming again, something she hadn't done in a while. She dreamed of her career, of the possibilities that lay ahead for her. She had always wanted to write, but for so long, she'd put that part of herself on hold, thinking that it wasn't practical, thinking that she had to put other people's needs before her own. But now, surrounded by the beauty of nature and the quiet stability of Jake's support, she was reminded of her true passions. The stories she had always wanted to tell, stories of resilience, of hope, of starting over. She realized that now was the time. She didn't have to wait any longer. That evening, after a long walk along the beach, Emma sat down at the small desk in their cabin and pulled out her laptop. Her fingers hovered over the keys for a moment before she took a deep breath and began typing. Back home, things were moving in a different direction for Ethan as well, though not in the way he had hoped. After his failed attempt to rebuild his reputation, he found himself even further isolated, consumed by the weight of his actions. The connections he had once relied on were gone, and there was no easy way back into the circles that had once admired him. His work life had stalled. His friends, those who remained, no longer looked at him with the same admiration. He had alienated everyone, and the loneliness was eating away at him. But Ethan wasn't ready to give up just yet. In the weeks following Emma's final message, he had tried to throw himself into work, even though it felt hollow. He had contacted some old colleagues, hoping to salvage whatever he could, but even they were starting to turn their backs. Ethan's reputation had soured beyond repair, and no amount of pleading was going to change that. In a moment of desperation, he thought about reaching out to Emma again, to apologize one last time, to beg for forgiveness, but he quickly realized that it was too late. His mistake hadn't just been a simple lapse in judgment. It had been a series of choices, a pattern of manipulation, of lies, and of selfishness that had ultimately destroyed everything he had once held dear. He had ruined his chances with Emma for good. Ethan sat alone in his apartment, staring at the blank screen of his computer, wondering if he would ever find a way to redeem himself. He had thought that success, power, and control would bring him happiness, but all they had done was isolate him from the people who truly mattered. And now he had no one left to turn to. Meanwhile, Emma had begun to put her plans into motion. She found herself writing more than she had in years, pages filled with the thoughts and emotions that had once been buried under layers of self-doubt. She had found her voice again, and with Jake's encouragement, she was beginning to share her work with the world. It wasn't easy. There were days when she questioned her abilities, when the fear of failure crept in. But she knew that she was doing this for herself, and that was the most important thing. "I'm proud of you, Emma," Jake said one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the stars twinkle overhead. "I can see how much this means to you." Emma smiled, leaning into him. "It's not about the success or the recognition. It's about reclaiming a part of myself that I lost along the way." Jake kissed the top of her head. "You're already winning, Emma. You've already won." As the weeks turned into months, Emma's life began to unfold in ways she had never imagined. She continued to write, to explore new opportunities, and to build a future for herself. But the most important part of this new beginning wasn't the career or the success, it was the peace she had found within herself. For the first time in a long time, Emma was exactly where she needed to be. Emma sat at her desk, the faint glow of her laptop screen casting shadows across the room. It had been several months since she'd made the decision to stop waiting for Ethan's apology, and yet his presence still lingered in her thoughts from time to time. Though the pain of their breakup had softened, a small part of her still wondered if she had made the right choice. Could forgiveness have healed the wounds? Or was it something she could never give? As her fingers hovered over the keys, she couldn't help but reflect on the painful past that had shaped so much of her life. She thought about the love she once had for Ethan, the kind that had felt so deep and real, only to be tainted by betrayal and manipulation. How could something that once seemed so pure fall apart so quickly? Her phone buzzed beside her, breaking the train of thought. She glanced at it, half expecting it to be a message from Jake, but when she saw the name on the screen, her heart skipped a beat. Ethan. She hadn't heard from him in months. Her heart pounded as she debated whether or not to pick up. Would it be another apology, another attempt to mend things that couldn't be fixed? Or was this just another reminder of the past she had worked so hard to leave behind? With a deep breath, Emma pressed the button to answer. "Hello," she said, her voice steady but unsure. "Emma, it's Ethan." His voice crackled through the phone, strained and uncertain. "I know it's been a while, but I need to talk to you." The familiar ache in her chest returned, but she pushed it away. She had moved on. She had a life now, a life she was building with Jake, a life where Ethan no longer had any claim. "I don't know if there's anything left to say, Ethan," Emma replied. "I think we've both said everything we needed to say." There was a long pause on the other end. She could almost hear Ethan's thoughts racing, the regret, the desperation, the longing for reconciliation. She had been there once, desperate to fix everything. But she had learned that some things couldn't be fixed. "I know I've messed up," he said finally, his voice trembling. "I'll regret the way I treated you for the rest of my life. I've lost everything, and it's all my fault. But I'm asking, Emma, can you find it in your heart to forgive me? I need that peace. I need to know that I'm not just a monster in your eyes." Emma closed her eyes, leaning back in her chair. Forgiveness. What did that even mean anymore? Could she forgive him? Could she even want to? Her thoughts drifted to Jake, to everything they had shared over the past few months. He was there for her in ways that Ethan never could have been. He supported her dreams, her passions, her flaws. He didn't demand her forgiveness. He didn't expect her to fix him. He simply loved her for who she was. "I've already forgiven you, Ethan," she said, her voice calm, but the weight of her words hung in the air. "But forgiveness isn't something I do for you. It's something I do for myself. It's something I do because I don't want to carry that anger anymore. And I don't need you to be part of my life to find peace. You can't fix what's been broken. And I can't keep looking back." Another long silence followed, and when Ethan spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. "I understand. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. I'll never stop being sorry for how I hurt you." Emma nodded, though he couldn't see her. "Goodbye, Ethan." With that, she hung up the phone, the finality of the action sinking in. She had given him her forgiveness, but she knew it didn't change the fact that their relationship was over. There was no going back. She took a deep breath, letting it out slowly. The feeling of release washed over her, like a burden she hadn't realized she was still carrying had been lifted. Later that evening, Emma sat outside on the porch with Jake, watching as the sky shifted into shades of pink and orange. They had spent the day exploring the nearby town, walking along the cobbled streets, finding little shops, and sharing stories. But now, as the world quieted around them, Emma felt a deep sense of peace she hadn't known in a long time. Jake sat beside her, his hand resting gently on hers. "Everything okay?" he asked, sensing her shift in mood. Emma smiled softly, her heart full. "Yeah, I spoke with Ethan today." Jake's brow furrowed, but he didn't interrupt. He waited, giving her space to share at her own pace. "He apologized again," she continued. "But it felt different this time. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about him trying to find some kind of peace in all the mess he's made." Jake nodded, squeezing her hand. "And how do you feel?" "Relieved," she said, her eyes meeting his. "I don't feel like I need closure anymore. I've already forgiven him. But I've also accepted that he's no longer a part of my life. I can't keep holding on to something that isn't real anymore." "That's big, Emma," Jake said, his voice filled with admiration. "I'm proud of you." Emma leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder as they sat in the quiet comfort of each other's company. "Thank you for being here. For not rushing me. For letting me do this in my own time." Jake kissed the top of her head. "You're my best friend, Emma. And I'll always be here for you. No matter what." The days that followed were filled with a new sense of purpose. Emma continued to write, diving into her work with a renewed focus and passion. She no longer had to write to prove something to herself. She wrote because it was what she loved, because it was part of who she was. She didn't need to seek validation from anyone anymore. Not from Ethan, not from anyone. She had found a voice, a strength that had been buried for so long. And now it was time to use it. As for Ethan, Emma heard nothing more from him. She didn't expect to. She had given him his apology, and in turn, she had forgiven him. That chapter of her life was closed, and while she wished him well, she knew that her life now lay ahead of her. And she was ready for it. The soft morning light filtered through the curtains as Emma sat at her desk, her fingers dancing across the keyboard. She had written more in the past few months than she had in the years prior. Her novel was taking shape, piece by piece, and it was exactly the kind of story she'd always dreamed of telling. It was raw, real, and filled with the kinds of emotions she had spent a lifetime experiencing. But it wasn't just the writing that was fulfilling her. Emma had realized that she was building a future, one that was hers and hers alone. It wasn't shaped by the decisions of others or by the mistakes of the past. She wasn't living in the shadow of a past relationship anymore. She was stepping into the light of her own aspirations, her own dreams. Her phone buzzed on the desk, pulling her away from the words on the screen. She glanced at it, half expecting a message from Jake. But it wasn't him. It was a notification from a publisher who had reached out to her months ago after reading an excerpt of her work. They were interested in seeing more. Her heart skipped a beat. This was it, the moment she'd been waiting for. Her mind raced as she read the message again. They wanted to know if she would be willing to send them a full manuscript. There was no turning back now. She could no longer hide behind the fear of rejection or failure. Emma knew this was her chance to make a real mark in the world of writing. But just as quickly as the excitement built inside her, a doubt crept into her mind. What if they didn't like it? What if they didn't see the value in her work? What if it was all a dream, one that would shatter before it even started? Shaking her head, Emma pushed those thoughts aside. She had worked too hard to let fear dictate her next steps. She tapped out a quick response, thanking them for their interest, and then got back to work, polishing the manuscript she had been carefully crafting. Every sentence, every paragraph felt like it had a life of its own, and Emma wasn't ready to let that go just yet. Later that day, Jake and Emma sat on the porch of their rented cabin, the cool evening air wrapping around them like a soft blanket. Emma had finished her work for the day, and Jake had just returned from his own errands. There was a peaceful rhythm to their life together now, a balance that felt right. "I have something to tell you," Emma said, her voice tinged with both excitement and nervousness. Jake raised an eyebrow, his lips curving into a smile. "What's up? You're looking at me like you've got a secret." Emma laughed, her nerves easing just a little. "It's not exactly a secret, but I got a response from that publisher I sent my manuscript to." Jake's eyes lit up. "That's amazing. What did they say?" "They want the full manuscript," Emma replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're interested in seeing the rest of it." Jake let out a loud whoop of joy, pulling her into a hug. "That's incredible, Emma. I knew this would happen. I always knew you had it in you." Emma smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "I'm scared, though. What if it doesn't work out? What if they don't like it?" Jake pulled back, holding her at arm's length. "Emma, they're going to love it. You've put your heart into this. It's yours. And that's all you can give. If they don't see that, then they're not the right publisher for you." Emma nodded, taking a deep breath. "You're right. I'm just still getting used to the idea of actually being a writer. You know, I get that. But you are. You've always been one. You've got the words, the story, the passion. Now it's just about sharing it with the world." Jake's words filled her with confidence. She had worked so hard to reach this point, but it was easy to get caught up in the fear of the unknown. The fear that maybe her best wouldn't be enough. But with Jake by her side, she realized that it wasn't about perfection. It was about putting herself out there, giving her best, and trusting the process. The following weeks passed in a blur of anticipation. Emma submitted the full manuscript, holding her breath every time she thought about it. She didn't want to get her hopes up, but the possibility of having her work published felt like a dream she was slowly waking up to. In the meantime, she continued to write, pushing forward with new ideas, new chapters, new stories. Writing had become as natural to her as breathing. And as much as she wanted her first book to be the one to make a splash, she knew it wasn't the end of her journey. It was only the beginning. Jake was there for every step, supporting her and offering his encouragement when her doubts crept in. It wasn't just about the publishing deal, it was about the life they were building together. A life that was no longer defined by past mistakes, but by the growth, the love, and the dreams they were both chasing. One evening, just as Emma was finishing a late-night writing session, she received an email notification from the publisher. Her heart skipped as she clicked on the message. Dear Emma, we are pleased to inform you that after reviewing your manuscript, we are excited to offer you a publishing contract for your book. We believe your work has a unique voice, and we are eager to help bring it to a wider audience. We look forward to discussing the next steps with you and making your book a reality. Best regards. The editorial team. Emma read the message again, making sure her eyes weren't deceiving her. A publishing contract. It was real. The dream she had been working toward was finally coming true. She jumped up from her desk, her hands shaking with excitement. She ran into the living room where Jake was relaxing, and without a word, she showed him the email. His face lit up as he read the message, and in an instant, he pulled her into a tight hug. I told you, Emma. I told you this was just the beginning, Jake said, his voice full of pride. I can't believe it! This is actually happening, Emma whispered, tears welling in her eyes. I'm going to be a published author. And you deserve it, Jake replied, his voice full of conviction. You've worked so hard for this. And now, you're going to show the world what you can do. That night, as they sat together on the couch, watching the stars twinkle outside, Emma felt a deep sense of peace. She had faced the darkest parts of her past, and now she was stepping into a future filled with endless possibilities. She had the love of someone who believed in her and the courage to believe in herself. The path ahead wouldn't always be easy. There would be challenges, obstacles, and doubts along the way. But Emma knew one thing for sure: she was no longer afraid of the future. She was ready to take on whatever came her way. Because now she knew that no dream was too big and no future was out of reach. The weeks that followed Emma's publishing contract felt like a whirlwind of excitement, meetings, and new challenges. The world she had once dreamed of entering was now real, and she had to quickly learn to navigate it. There were edits to be made, promotional plans to discuss, and interviews to prepare for. It was everything she had ever wanted, and yet, with it came a strange sense of pressure that weighed heavily on her shoulders. One crisp evening, while Jake was at the local coffee shop working on a project of his own, Emma found herself alone in their living room, scrolling through her email inbox. She had just received an update from her publisher, and as she skimmed through the message, something caught her eye: an invitation for an in-person interview with a major literary magazine. This would be her first real exposure in the media, and the nerves she had been trying to suppress started to bubble to the surface. It was one thing to write in the quiet of her own space. It was another to have her face, her story, and her words scrutinized by the world. She had never been comfortable with attention, always preferring to hide behind the pages of her book rather than standing in the spotlight. But this was part of the deal, she reminded herself. This was the next step, the culmination of all her hard work. Emma leaned back, closing her eyes as she breathed deeply. She had come so far since her breakup with Ethan. The woman who had once been paralyzed by doubt and insecurity was no longer the same person. She had faced so many fears already, and she had survived them. This, too, was something she would face head-on. But still, the lingering truth of her past weighed on her. As the interview date approached, a gnawing feeling settled in her chest. There was still something unresolved, something she hadn't fully dealt with. It was Ethan. His shadow had loomed over her for too long. Even though she had forgiven him, and even though she had moved forward in so many ways, a part of her still carried the weight of that chapter. She had learned to forgive, but she hadn't truly let go. It wasn't just the betrayal or the pain, it was the idea that someone she had loved so deeply had never truly seen her for who she was. The fear that perhaps she hadn't been enough. As the days passed and the interview grew nearer, Emma found herself losing sleep, her thoughts spiraling back into the past. She had come so far, and yet she still carried the scars of a love that had once meant everything to her. And as much as she tried to push it away, she knew that until she fully confronted this, the peace she sought would always feel just out of reach. The day of the interview arrived with a sense of finality. Emma stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her outfit and running a brush through her hair. She had never been one for overthinking her appearance, but today felt different. This was a moment she had worked her entire life for, and she didn't want to let nerves get the best of her. Jake walked into the room just as she was putting on the finishing touches. His smile was warm and reassuring, as it always was. "You look amazing," he said, his voice soft with affection. Emma chuckled, feeling the familiar flutter of butterflies in her stomach. "Thanks, but I'm still nervous." "This feels huge." "It is huge." "And you're ready for it," Jake said, his eyes never leaving hers. "You've worked your whole life for this. You're going to do great." Emma nodded, appreciating his unwavering support. "I hope so. It's just, I've been thinking a lot about how much has changed. And how much I've changed." "You've grown so much, Emma," Jake said, stepping closer. "I've seen it every day. You've gone from a place of being afraid to speak up to standing up and sharing your truth with the world. And now you're going to let the world see you, who you really are." Emma took a deep breath, trying to calm the whirlwind of emotions inside her. "I guess I've spent so much time worrying about what others think of me that I haven't stopped to think about how I feel about myself. About how far I've come." Jake's eyes softened. "It's okay to let go of the past. You've done the work. And now it's time to show everyone that you're ready to move forward, to live your truth." The weight of his words hit her like a wave. He was right. She had spent so much time carrying the burden of other people's mistakes, especially Ethan's, that she had forgotten to acknowledge her own strength. It was time to let go, to step into the future without the chains of her past holding her back. The interview took place in a sleek, modern studio. The bright lights, the cameras, and the crew made Emma feel small and exposed, but she forced herself to remember the advice Jake had given her. She was here because of her hard work, because of her talent. She wasn't just a girl with a past, she was a woman with a future, one that she had built from the ground up. The interviewer, a woman with short, sharp features and a warm smile, introduced herself as Lila. She wasted no time diving into the conversation. "Emma, it's such a pleasure to have you here today. Your book is already generating a lot of buzz, and I know our readers are eager to know more about you and your journey. Let's start at the beginning. What inspired you to write this story?" Emma took a deep breath, focusing on the question. "The story is about love, loss, and healing. It's something I've always been drawn to, but I think it's more than that. It's about finding yourself after the world has tried to break you. I've been through my own share of heartbreak, and writing was a way for me to understand it, to process it, and ultimately to move on." Lila nodded, her eyes keen with interest. "And the love that you mention in the book, was that based on your own experiences?" Emma hesitated for a moment. This was it, the moment where she had to decide whether to share the full truth or continue to hide behind a carefully crafted version of her story. "Yes," Emma said finally, her voice steady. "The love I write about is based on real experiences, real heartbreak. But I've learned that sometimes the hardest part of love is letting go. And that's something I've had to do." Lila's eyes softened. "That sounds like a very personal journey. Was it difficult to write about it?" Emma nodded, her heart swelling with a mix of emotions. It was, but it was also freeing. I think writing about it allowed me to heal in ways I didn't expect. It was like letting go of all the things that held me back for so long. The interview continued for another hour, but Emma felt a sense of relief wash over her. She had been honest, vulnerable, and real. And for the first time in a long time, she felt truly seen, not just for the woman she had been, but for the woman she was becoming. As she left the studio later that day, Jake was waiting for her outside, a wide smile on his face. "How did it go?" "It went well," Emma said, her voice filled with a quiet confidence. "I told the truth. All of it." Jake grinned, pulling her into a hug. "I'm proud of you. You've come so far, Emma. You're finally free." And for the first time in years, Emma believed it. She was free. The days following the interview felt like a new chapter in Emma's life, one that had a sense of clarity and purpose she'd never known before. For so long, she had been tangled up in the past, haunted by old wounds, by mistakes, by the person she used to be. But now, there was a feeling of release, of fresh air filling her lungs after holding her breath for far too long. Jake had been her constant, the one person who believed in her even when she couldn't believe in herself. And now, as they sat together on the porch of their small cottage, watching the sun set over the horizon, Emma couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude for how far they had come. The world had changed for both of them. They had faced their struggles, their fears, and their uncertainties, but they had emerged from it all stronger. Together. "Do you ever think about how much we've changed since we met?" Emma asked, her voice soft as she turned to face Jake, who was watching the sky with a contemplative look. "All the time," he said with a smile, his eyes meeting hers. "I remember when you were so hesitant to even talk about your writing. Now look at you. You're a published author, about to share your story with the world." Emma laughed softly, running a hand through her hair. "It feels surreal. There were times I didn't think I would ever get to this point. I was so afraid of rejection, of being not enough." "You've always been enough, Emma," Jake said, his tone firm. "You just needed to believe it. And now you do." Emma felt a swell of emotion rise within her at his words. He had been right there with her every step of the way, through the difficult moments, the self-doubt, the fear. And now, she realized, they were building something together. Something that was their own, free from the weight of her past. They had taken the time to heal, to grow, and to redefine what their relationship meant. It was no longer just about love. It was about partnership, mutual respect, and the freedom to chase their dreams, both together and individually. "I'm glad you're here," Emma said, her voice thick with emotion. "I never would have had the courage to do this without you." Jake's smile was warm and understanding. "You had the courage all along, Emma. You just needed someone to remind you of it." Later that evening, after dinner, they sat in front of the fireplace, each of them with a mug of hot tea in hand. The air outside had grown colder, but inside, the warmth of the fire and their shared presence kept the chill at bay. "You've got another interview tomorrow, right?" Jake asked, looking over at Emma with a raised eyebrow. Emma nodded. "Yeah, it's for a feature in a literary journal. I'm excited, but also a little nervous. It's the first time I'll really have to talk about the book in depth. I've written about it, but to explain it. I don't know, it feels different." Jake leaned back in his chair, his eyes thoughtful. "I think you're going to be amazing. You've already done the hardest part, you've written your truth. The rest will follow." Emma smiled at his unwavering faith in her. "I hope so. I've been thinking a lot about everything I've gone through to get to this point. It's more than just writing a book, it's about sharing something deeply personal. And I guess I've never really done that before." "You're doing it now," Jake said. "With every word you write, every interview you give, you're sharing a part of yourself with the world. And that's a powerful thing." Emma's heart fluttered at his words. It was one thing to write a book. It was another to put your soul out there for the world to see. But that's what she was doing, wasn't it? She was sharing the pieces of her life that had shaped her, the love and loss, the healing and growth. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. The night grew late, and as the fire in the hearth flickered low, Emma found herself reflecting on her journey. It had been long and winding, filled with moments of doubt, fear, and confusion. But now she could look back and see the growth, the transformation that had taken place. She wasn't just the woman who had been heartbroken by Ethan anymore. She was Emma, the woman who had rebuilt herself, piece by piece, and found her strength in the process. She looked over at Jake, his face soft and relaxed in the glow of the firelight. He was the constant in her life now, the one person who had never wavered in his belief in her. "You know," Emma said, breaking the comfortable silence between them, "I've been thinking about what you said earlier. About how we've changed. I don't think I realized how much until now." Jake glanced over at her, his expression gentle. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I don't think I truly understood what it meant to be in a partnership until I met you. To really be there for someone, to support them not just when it's easy but when it's hard. You've always been there for me." Jake reached across the space between them, taking her hand in his. "You've been there for me, too, Emma. We've helped each other grow, learn, and become better people. And now we get to walk forward together." Emma squeezed his hand, feeling a deep sense of peace settle over her. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in her life, she felt ready to embrace it. Ready to face whatever challenges and joys came her way, knowing that she wasn't alone. She had a story to tell, a life to live, and a love that would guide her through it all. As Emma lay in bed that night, her thoughts drifted back to everything she had overcome. She had been afraid for so long, afraid of failing, afraid of being rejected, afraid of never being enough. But in the end, she had discovered something far more valuable than success or recognition. She had discovered herself. And with that discovery came the understanding that she was capable of anything. She had faced her past, embraced her truth, and built a future that was hers and hers alone. She wasn't just an author, she was a woman who had conquered her fears, who had found the strength to move forward. And tomorrow, she would step into that future with open arms. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?